Ava clutched her heart. How sad. It's a lone grave for someone called Anise. I wonder who loved her. She looked to the flower in front of the grave. She must have liked yellow lilies. That's my favorite kind of flower, you know. Andrew and Ava shared a glance while Tina huffed irritated. She muttered out, Who cares? When someone dies, they die. End of story, okay? Move on. We have to focus on getting out of this godforsaken place. Ava broke her and Andrew's gaze, and she reached for the flower. You must not touch the grave tree, maiden! They all jumped at the dark voice that echoed. A massive spider came up from a burrow as old dead leaves scattered away from the ground. I am the guardian beast of this lone grave. I cannot let you defile her remains. The spider charged at Ava like she was a trespasser. Andrew pulled her out of the way while Tina jumped high above the spider. She landed right on top of him as he thrashed about. Andrew then charged for the beast, as webs shot out and entrapped him in a cocoon. Tina was slashing at the guardian, trying to weaken him. A bright green light from Andrew's sword shot through the webs, which made the webs unravel. Andrew freed himself while he aimed his sword at the ground beneath the spider as he charged for Andrew. The green light shot from his blade, and the explosion of debris from the ground sent the spider flying to the ceiling. Unfortunately, Tina was sent flying as well. She reached the ground but ended up in Andrew's arms, for he was ready to catch her. The spider was headed back down, so Andrew and Tina jolted out of the way. As the spider made impact with the ground, a large tremor moved through the ground. The spider helped itself up as it charged for them both. Ava summoned vines from the ground to wrap around all 8 of his legs. He collapsed right in front of them, so Andrew and Tina jumped on top. They sliced his top layer of skin. They irritated him and distracted him as he stumbled up only to crash into a wall. They hopped off just as many rocks fell from the top cave to crush him. Andrew ran to Ava after huffing in exhaustion. Why did he attack you like that? Andrew asked. Ava shook her head and looked back to the lone tombstone. He was guarding something. I think it's her grave, but who is she? The guardian perished underneath the pile of rocks. Tina looked at the light suddenly flowing into the room. A far-off door had opened and it led outside. The exit! Come on, let's get out of here! Andrew followed after Tina. Ava turned around to stare at the grave boggled. Andrew called after her, so she hurried out of the eerie grave. The troops waiting by the exit were greeted by Tina and Andrew as they walked back out from the exit. Trickster looked to see if his rare bird was harmed. What happened? Before Andrew even took a breath to speak a single word, Ava interrupted. Ava aimed her ferocity directly at Tor. She shoved Tor with an untamed, fiery nature. Why did you push me to that pitfall? Tor was ready to defend his lie. It is not very ladylike to shove nor to lie, young maiden. Watch your words. You were trying to escape through the thicket, while we went on ahead. But you fell into a pitfall and got caught. A vein popped from her forehead as everyone seemed to think the same, and she had no way of defending herself, along with the truth. Ava was going to break her lungs with a scream, but Trickster pointed his sword right at her. Stop lying, Ava. Why would my guard push you into a pitfall? What purpose could that hold but an annoying delay? Don't run off again. I mean it. Andrew grabbed her and followed after Trickster and his troops. Down the road was a large center of rocks. Ava immediately noticed the white pillar in the center. As Trickster led the rest of his small group of troops, this cluster of boulders fell from above to block the path from whence they came. They were now locked in. The troops drew their swords as they didn't know what to expect. Ava ran to the center where the broken pillars surrounded the spiral symbol. Andrew watched as Ava pressed the symbol. She had her energy drained yet again, and she collapsed. Andrew then ran over to her. He didn't like to see her collapse, even when he knew she would wake soon after. He scooped her up as feathers started to descend all around them. Andrew had pulled Ava off to the side. He placed her by the blocked gate as a ferocious screech echoed into the sky. They all witnessed this giant black bird with wings that blocked out the sun. As he dove towards the ground, his claws made the white tower that Ava used to awaken him crumbled to the floor. Some troops were caught by debris or by the wind of the giant bird's wings. This black bird wore an iron mask. His yellow eyes shined through the mask. Spikes surrounded the shrine of the bird elder. Some troops were pushed by the giant bird's claws into those spikes. It went right through their armor. The wind almost pushed Tina back as she was caught off guard. Andrew caught Tina as she fell back, and his heavy armor kept them in place. The bird flew down to claim the lives of more soldiers as he snatched them up to his nest and feasted on them. While the bird was busy, Andrew went right to the wall under his nest. Tina was going to follow, but he gestured for her to stay put. As the bird dove back down and was unknowingly close enough to Andrew, he drew his sword and sliced his leg. The bird screeched in pain and crashed into the wall. His mask began to crack a slight bit. Ava had just woken up and she rubbed her eyes. She realized the bird was right next to her on the floor, breathing heavily and in pain. She was about to try and calm it, but he flew straight toward Andrew. The bird caught Andrew off guard because he thought he already stunned the bird. Andrew froze as the bird headed straight for him. His heart sank as a vine suddenly grabbed his wrist and pulled him out of the way thanks to Ava. The bird missed Andrew by an inch. It crashed into the mountainside again and his iron mask cracked enough to completely crumble to the floor. Ava walked over to it as it was groaning and screeching in pain. Ava put her hand on its wing, but it became agitated. It didn't even look to see if Ava was a Nova. The bird thought she was just another human trying to destroy the woods. He snatched her up with his good claw and flew her up to his nest. He was about to eat her and his claw was so strong that her hair tie and ribbon flew off. Her long black hair was then released from her braid. Her long black wavy and wispy hair dropped all the way down to her ribs, along with her long bangs. The red cardinal followed her up to the nest and fluttered by her. Ava knew she had to move fast. She placed her fingers in the corners of her mouth and whistled louder than the bird's screech. The bird froze just as it leaned in to swallow her whole. She had pointed her wrist up into the bird's complete view. The bird drew back, frightened that he almost took out the last Nova. "You are a Nova? I thought your energy smelled familiar. What an ancient sight! What is it that you seek?" Ava calmed and stood from the very high up nest. "Ava!" Ava waved to Andrew to let him know that she was okay. She walked closer to the giant bird. "You better take me down." The bird held out its giant wings, so Ava climbed on his back. He flew her down. As she jumped down and flipped her lush hair over her shoulders, Andrew's eyes grew wide as his eyebrows jumped up his forehead. Andrew froze by the new level just added to her beauty. The bird tried to land, but he collapsed from his sliced leg. Ava rushed to him and she called many vines from the ground. They all wrapped around the bird's leg tight enough to stop the blood and to straighten out the leg like a cast. The bird stood up after trying out his leg cautiously. "Thank you." Ava continued on. "You're welcome. We need permission to enter the Forgotten Temple." The bird ruffled his feathers and a red orb dropped out from his wing, along with many black feathers. "If you wish it, go with my blessing." Trickster took the orb away from Ava's hands as always. Andrew couldn't help himself when he snuck peeks of Ava's new hairdo. When she caught him and their eyes locked for the first time, Andrew turned his back to her, embarrassed to be caught staring. He caught himself and he chose to look away at the bare wall to deny his natural affections. Trickster was busy with the bird. "Enough. Tell me about this key. Is it in the Forgotten Temple or not?" The bird ruffled his feathers from Trickster's disrespect. "The key is hardest to find, for it is a rare bird indeed." The bird then flew back up to his nest, so Trickster didn't bother to ask another question. The lead admiral that Trickster appointed took off his helmet. Tor's shaggy dark brown hair dropped over his hazel eyes. His dark skin only gave more appeal to his light eyes. "We have suffered many casualties, Trickster." He looked to see the last elder finished off his troops for good. Trickster was accustomed to death, and in a scary sense it did not affect him whatsoever. He never held remorse for his loyal soldiers. "It is their job to die for me, but not now their job is over." Trickster then turned to the last soldier, Tor. "Only the strong survive." Trickster cleared his throat. He then put his hand on Tor's shoulder. "And that is why you are still here to serve me, Tor. I have a task for you. I am going on ahead to find the temple on my own. Stay behind and watch the others, knowing them that want to rest. I can't wait any longer, though." Trickster snuck off. Tor then turned back around and placed his helmet back over his head. Tina dusted off the feathers from her shoulders and from her hair. Tina grabbed Ava's hand. "Come on, Ava, let's go get cleaned up." Tina suddenly took a liking to Ava. Ava smiled awkwardly but followed after Tina. Andrew noticed that Trickster wasn't around. As Tor approached, Andrew asked, "Where's Trickster?" Tor led Andrew after the girls. He went on ahead to the Forgotten Temple. Andrew stopped in his tracks. Tor was ready to put up a defense if Andrew grew a temper. "You just let him? We have to go after him." Andrew tried to follow after Trickster. "Aren't you forgetting something?" Tor pointed to the girls. Andrew huffed, annoyed. Tor and Andrew followed the girls down the path, but they turned toward the spring within the thicket of the woods. Tina, we have to continue on. We have to catch up to Trickster. Tina shook her head, and she pointed to the dirt on her arms, hands, and in her dark purple suit of armor. Ava watched Tina's intense eyes closely, waiting for her to throw a temper tantrum. She really wanted to take a bath. No, I'm disgusting. We girls need to bathe. We can't be gross like you boys 24/7. Now wait over there. Give us some privacy. Andrew threw his hands into his hair. Tor laughed at Andrew's frustration and lack of power to stop Tina's fiery order. Andrew and Tor waited on the path. Tina pulled off her light armor and hung it over a branch. Ava looked away and covered her gaze. Tina started laughing as she dived into the spring. Don't be shy. Ava took off her red jean jacket. She then began to unbutton her pink dress, which buttoned all the way to the bottom. She dropped down to her bare skin like Tina and rushed into the spring before anyone else noticed. Ava, can I talk to you about something serious? Ava nodded her head. She was concerned until she figured out the not-so-serious dilemma. Andrew is distant now. I don't know what I did. I mean, he doesn't tell me anything anymore. Ava dunked her head under the water to soften her hair. Can I tell you something without you getting mad? Tina nodded her head. Ava knew Tina said it was okay, but she was still frightened to say, Okay, well, I've noticed that you can't go 5 seconds without latching onto Andrew's arm. You shouldn't be so clingy, you know? Let him come to you. Sometimes you need to know when to give someone space. The light bulb went off, but Tina was still angry with the constructive criticism on Ava's part. Tina collected lots of water in one sweep and splashed Ava in the face. Ava blocked Tina's attack. You said you wouldn't get mad. Ava started to splash Tina back. Well, you shouldn't have made me that way. They both laughed. Tina then started to swim out, and she placed her clothes and purple armor back on. You coming? Ava smirked. I'll stay a little bit longer. One of Ava's favorite things was swimming. It was something she hardly got to do since the villagers feared for her safety. They acted like she couldn't swim. Andrew had left the set-up camp to go back to the spring. He missed Tina, for she had just left. But he still thought they were both in the spring. He was going to tell them to get out because they had to move on, but Andrew saw Ava instead. Andrew hid himself behind the tree with sudden fearful eyes. He was suddenly in this trance, and he couldn't take his eyes off of Ava. His throat became dry, and his palms pulsed sweat. Andrew. Tor had caught him staring, so Andrew jumped startled. Oh, I was just going to tell the girls to dry off. Tor saw right through Andrew and stated the obvious. I shouldn't have to tell you this, but don't fall in love with her. Tor snapped. Andrew looked back to Ava, and his eyes gained a peculiar gloom. He glanced to the floor to accept it. I'm with Tina. You don't have to tell me anything. Tor walked away from Andrew. Good. Then it should be easy for you to heed my advice. Andrew walked back out to Ava. He kept his cold shoulder frozen. Ava, time to go. She turned around startled. Oh, okay. Just give me a second. He left so she could change. Her hair was still damp, but she squeezed most of the water out of it. Andrew, Tor, and Tina were waiting on the path. Andrew gestured to Ava in a playful manner for her to hurry up to rejoin the group. Patience, good thing happens to those who wait. Andrew smiled as Ava always had lectures for him. Tor watched Andrew's playful reactions around Ava closely. Andrew led the way, and the others followed until the sun began to set. They came upon a cottage. Tina looked to the old sign atop the cottage. High Road Inn. Tina jumped up and down. Yes, it's a resting spot. Tina went to hold Andrew's hands. Please, my feet are throbbing. Andrew nodded his head weakly. He was tired, too. Tor walked in and went straight to the counter. A man in ratted brown and black clothes was at the counter. Welcome to the High Road Inn. Tor handed the man some coins. 3 rooms, please. The man behind the counter pointed to the side. Right this way, sir. Tor grabbed the keys to the rooms. He handed Andrew the keys. You and Tina can share a room. Ava, here's your key. She reached for it as the man at the counter stared. As Andrew and Tina found their room, Ava pulled Tor back. Why did you push me into that pit? Tor took her angered hands off of him. I didn't, he smirked. Tor went down the hall of the inn to find his room while he chuckled. Ava shook her head, knowing that he was up to something at her expense. Ava was going to get settled into sleep when she heard a knock on the door. Ava opened the door to see Tina with tears in her eyes. Ava pulled Tina into her room. "What's wrong?" Ava closed the door behind her as Tina sat on the bed.